America, I'm Hugh Hewitt. As is remarked upon in the brand new book, Glory, Grief, and the Gavel by my next guest, John Leganski, that song was the song that marked Arnold Schwarzenegger's rise to the governorship. And then Kevin McCarthy kind of adopted it throughout his entire political career. John was one of his key eggs, including Floor Whip, and it's a fabulous book. John, welcome. Glory, Grief, and the Gavel hits bookstores this week. It's available at Amazon.com. I first want to tell you a couple of things, John. I appreciate you got married in St. Joseph's Church, but as a result, I'm obliged to tell a fellow Catholic, orange ties aren't about the Bears, they're about the Browns. So even though you wear them after rare Bears win, they really belong to the Browns, all right? So just remember that the next time you take your orange tie out.
Fair enough. You can have the AFC, we'll take the NFC.
All right, that's a deal. Now, I thought the opening of your book, why don't you tell people about briefly your relationship with Kevin McCarthy, how long it went, which jobs you held for him. Kevin's a dear friend of the show and a friend of mine. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for having me on. First of all, I really appreciate it. I started as an intern for Kevin, actually in 2012. I was a junior at Stanford University, came out to DC, thought I was just going to come here as a brief stint to maybe get ready for law school or something like that. And instead, like so many young people, came here and fell in love with the city and with the Hill and wanted to make a career out of it. So I worked for Kevin as a staff assistant in 2013. That's really like the low man on the totem pole. And stayed with him for over 10 years. I became the youngest floor director in House history at age 25, the first Republican aide to work for the floor teams for the majority whip, the majority leader, the minority leader, then Speaker of the House. And then Kevin asked me to be his deputy chief of staff when he did ascend to the speakership.
Now you're over at Harbinger Strategies since Kevin left and retired as speaker. What does Harbinger Strategies do?
Yeah, we're a leading government affairs and consulting firm in town. So I like to say I take a lot of what I learned on the Hill and try to apply that and translate that to clients now in the private sector. You know, let them know what's coming around the pike, who are the main players, who are the people that we need to touch and influence to get a certain policy outcome. So it's kind of like, you know, Tony Romo going from playing on the field to now commenting on the booth. But it's been fun to learn the other side of DC as well.
So now this is a book that I would say covers 10 years, from 2015, when the boiling point was reached between John Boehner and the right wing, to Kevin's exit. That's the 10 years on the House side, and it's about who holds the gavel, who's the speaker. I want to start on page 26 because I think this is the key. By the summer of 2015, the bad blood between then Speaker John Boehner and his right flank had reached the boiling point. How were you aware of that? Because you're obviously working for Kevin's organization at that point. Why do you know that it's at a boiling point?
Yeah. Well, the first time Speaker Boehner ran for the post was after the Tea Party wave of 2010. He won unanimously. He got every single one of his Republican colleagues to vote for him. And that is the last time that happened in my lifetime. Ever since then, the speaker's vote has been kind of used as leverage for different factions to try to, you know, enact procedural or policy changes that they desire. The next time around, there was more of a informal coup attempt. It was unsuccessful, but you know there was a concerted effort to vote against him on the floor. He was reelected as speaker for his third term. But fortuitously, Mario Cuomo's funeral was the same day of the speaker's election. And so a number of Democrats missed that vote. There were a number of Republicans that had all Democrats been there, he would have had to go to a multiple ballot speaker's race. And so it was kind of festering in the background. Obviously, Mark Meadows introduced the motion to vacate resolution that August, which introduced those three words to a lot of political viewers around the country that may have not heard of that. And
motion to vacate
came to a head.
So I hate the motion to vacate. I hated everyone involved in the last attempt. Mark Meadows and I get along pretty well. But the Knucklehead caucus is what I chose to call the people that opposed Kevin, because they were nihilists. They would just drive everything into the ground and destroy the Republican Party. But it really begins with Boehner. Why did they have a falling out with Boehner? Because I don't think John Boehner was a particularly great speaker or leader.
Yeah, you know, I think after being in the role for so many years, you know, you take a lot of the votes that you have to take as a leader, right? You have to raise the debt ceiling, you have to fund the government. I think even Boehner's team and him would admit that, you know, at some point it gets a little tiresome to continue to deal with members and their wants and their needs. in any event, he had the way he led, and there was a different kind of group of, Tea Party Republicans and beyond that style-wise, they were not, maybe meshing as well with him as they wanted to. And so
Now,
I
I have
agree
my
with you
own
that
little
making this
scorecard,
horrible.
John Leganski, which is John Boehner used to come on this program's been on for 26 years. Kevin's always been a staple of it. Eric Cantor is a staple of it. Until he was elected speaker, John Boehner was a staple of it. After John Boehner left, Paul Ryan, Kevin, now Mike Johnson comes on. John Boehner never appeared once as speaker because he couldn't give a damn about conservative media after he got the job. That's not part of the job, is it? Just, screw the right wing? Because that's what John Boehner did.
Yeah, I'd say we learned that lesson ourselves, right? Kevin, as you said, wanted to bring everyone into the tent. He was a frequent guest on your show. He reached out to the Breitbarts of the world, everywhere, because he said these guys are part of the movement, and it's not the country club and party of yesteryear. This is a new type of rise that's going on, and we need to either channel this energy towards something positive, or it can, overwhelm us. And so that was certainly a part of our strategy.
And Kevin worked harder. I think Kevin McCarthy is the hardest working man I've known him forever, since before you got to Stanford, back to when he was in the Central Valley, maybe when Bill Thomas was appearing on my program, when he was his young intern. And so he works hard. I want to get to the curse of the majority leader before we get to the drama of getting elected speaker, because I think that's a good observation for people to know. What is the curse of the majority leader?
Yeah, that's right. So I went back and did a lot of research for this book, and I was surprised to learn that no sitting House Majority Leader who served a full term in that post was elected Speaker over the course of my lifetime. You go back to Hale Boggs, that was a tragic incident. He died in a plane crash. But Tom DeLay, Dick Gephardt, Dick Armey, Steny Hoyer, the list goes on and on. And so while the circumstances for all those individuals differs, I think what is true is that again, you're a little bit more of never, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. You're in that post, it's sort of a purgatory. And whereas that used to be a springboard to the speakership in, the early 1900s, it really hasn't been the case. And that was something I think Kevin was also going against, was this institutional inertia from folks that were saddling him with, the decisions of past speakers that he didn't really have a play call in making.
Then you had the failure to launch, and remind people about that. It's detailed in Glory, Grief, and the Gavel, but the failure to launch was a Hannity show appearance, because media is not always not dangerous.
Yeah, so Speaker Boehner did resign in 2015, actually the day after Pope Francis visited the Capitol. So it was a very emotional day when Francis visited, and then a very, bit of whiplash the next day. Kevin was the majority leader at the time, and he ran for the post. He got the support of a lot of his colleagues, but there was a Hannity interview, as you note. Hannity was a pretty dominant, he still is, but was definitely the dominant force on Fox at that time. And, dealt with the Benghazi Committee and Hillary Clinton, and it led to a snowball. It's kind of quaint to think that that used to be a scandal in Washington compared to some of the things we see today, but it certainly was a scandal. It went for a couple days, and it led to another challenger or two emerging. And Kevin ultimately said, listen, I don't want to put guys through this for my sake. I'm going to step away, and that's when we got Paul Ryan as Speaker.
With John Leganski, he is the author of Glory, Grief, and the Gavel, the youngest floor leader for a speaker in the history of the House of Representatives. And John wrote down in great and wonderful detail, compelling storytelling, what happened with the Knucklehead caucus and Speaker McCarthy. For those of you with short memories, the Knucklehead caucus was chaired by Matt Gaetz. It included Bob Good, Andy Biggs, Matt Rosendale. It does not include Chip Roy, doesn't include a few other people. Eli Crane kind of went into the Knucklehead caucus. I mean, how frustrated did you get, John, dealing with these people? Because they did not have an agenda. They were just wreckers.
That's right. Yeah. So I sorted them into two groups, and you kind of just did yourself as well. There was a group that we considered the maybe Kevins. They were the Chip Roys of the world, the Scott Perrys of the world, who, I think they wanted more influence for the Freedom Caucus, but they were trying to work in good faith to get to an outcome. And then there was the Never Kevin Caucus. As you mentioned, Matt Gaetz led that. I call them, Gaetz and his 8 useful idiots. They were not interested in policy and procedure. They were just interested in throwing bombs and trying to block our path. And so we ultimately were able to go around them. President Trump, laid the hammer down on those groups at the end of the last vote. It was pretty dramatic. We got them to go present ultimately. But that, divide kind of persisted throughout the tenure in the Speaker's office. And we eventually came to the decision, listen, these guys just don't want to go along because it's us. And far
What I can never understand, John, I would go to the McCarthy summit. I'd take my show out to the McCarthy summit in Jackson Hole or wherever he was holding it. And he'd always recruit these great field of candidates and he would stand them up. They finally won in 2022. None of these guys or gals, Lauren Boebert's in the Knucklehead caucus, ever did anything for anybody else. So why did the members even abide by them? Why would they help them in any way?
Yeah. That's just the nature of the tight margins, right? We had 222 seats. And so if 5, 6 members decide they're not going to vote for the rule that week, they're not going to vote for the speaker, they're not going to vote for whatever package is on the floor, you're stuck. And you either have to go to Democrats or you're short of the majority. I think that's going to be a feature, unfortunately, of our politics moving forward, Hugh, is these tight margins in the House. The battlefield has shrunk so much that, you're going to have the ability for 5, 10 people to sway their direction. Fortunately, 6 of those 8 that voted against Kevin will not be in Congress next year. I think that's good. I write in the book, they learned there's nothing for the Joker to do when Batman's gone.
Oh, I got that right. Oh, you stole my favorite line in the book.
Oh, sorry.
Turns out there's not much for the Jokers to do when the Batman is gone. How many of them are gone now? Because that's very satisfactory to me.
Yeah, it'll be 6 out of the 8 that voted to remove him will not be in the House of Representatives next year, whether through retirement, resignation, pursuit of some other career in life. But, I think it tells you, again, these are not the people that, were interested in improving the institution, were finding legislative outcomes. They had a different motivation driving them. Perhaps they received it, as the Bible says, amen, I say they have their reward, but they're not going to be in the halls of power anymore.
Who are the 2 that are left?
Crane and Burchett will still be in the House next Congress.
Oh, well, Burchett's chasing
like I keep
flying
track
saucers.
or anything. Not like I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I keep track. I think Kevin might keep track too. I saw the former speaker and the former chair of the banking committee, Patrick Mayhenry, at an event I was doing in the Washington Convention Center about artificial intelligence, and those guys are just doing great. No one wants to get near the radioactive people. I think it's a lesson people need to learn. If you blow up the caucus, you might blow it up, but no one's going to, you're getting fragged too. Is that a good takeaway, John?
100%, 100%. There's a saying I've been using that says, if you seek revenge, dig 2 graves. And I think a lot of those guys, they thought they were going to get revenge on us from what they failed to do in January, but it ultimately led to a lot of their downfall, some pretty dramatically. And so I agree. These folks that burn fast, they burn bright and quick, and that's the end. So I'd rather have more legislators in it for the right reasons than that group.
So Mike Johnson has now taken over the gavel, and he hasn't had the same motion to vacate woes that Kevin has. They are basically the same guy. They're good floor people. They know what their members want. They work it very hard. But is he advantaged by the fact that the knuckleheads are gone? Were they replaced with responsible people with a vision of how the Constitution works?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, he benefited, and Mike's doing a great job. Let me state that up front. I know him. I know a lot of people on staff. They're doing a great job, again, with these really tight margins in the House, getting reconciliation done, getting the other must-pass bills done. But I think, yes, there was a little bit of the House touched the stove when they removed Kevin, and they saw how dangerous that was. We were speakerless for 3 weeks. Israel was attacked that next week, October 7th, and the House couldn't pass aid to Israel in that period of time. And so I think a lot of people realized how dangerous that was. Mike did face a motion to vacate motion, but Democrats and Republicans thankfully came together and tamped that down. I don't think that's how our founders wanted the House to run with recall elections. We don't have it in our system. You serve your 2 years. If you have to run for re-election on your merits, you win or lose, fine. But these referendums and recall elections, I think, are dangerous in the House and in our politics writ large.
Only knuckleheads love them. But